I served an unapproachable God. Well, I served the high priest who served an unapproachable God, but everything changed that night. I'd been hearing stories about Jesus, claiming to be the Son of God. Seemed it was all the high priest could talk about in the weeks leading up to that night. Of course, that's what I call it now. That night. We all followed Judas into the garden because Judas was the only one who knew exactly where Jesus would be. And when we got there, Jesus looked upset. You know, it was like he was the only one awake. There were others there, but it was dark and I didn't get a good look at them. So the man, Judas, walked up to him and kissed Jesus on the cheek. And I was so close, I could hear Jesus call Judas friend. Well, I heard that. And then I heard nothing. I just remember the flash of a blade and the warmth of my own blood streaming down my face. Ugh, quiet. And then I got dizzy. I mean, it was just hanging there by a thread. And then Jesus touched me. Of course, I'd heard stories about his touch. There was a man that he healed with dirt and spit. For others, it was just his hands. But it wasn't about his hands for me. It was the look in his eyes. And in a second, everything that I knew about this man changed. And his eyes were filled with compassion, grief, joy. Of course, and when he took his hand away, I mean, it's perfectly fine. So they had their mock trial for him, and people kept shouting the craziest accusations at him. But he just stood there, looking so compassionate. I mean, the whole thing was set up to condemn him, and he just stood there, looking sorry for us. Well, of course, there was the sentencing, and then there was Pilate and the crucifixion. I mean, you couldn't deny what was happening, not with the darkness and the earthquake and the veil. I was in the temple when the veil ripped. It was the loudest crack I have ever heard in my whole life, and then I turned around and I saw the veil just split right in half. And even I knew what that meant. God was inviting us all in. That unapproachable God that I served, oh, he was now approachable. God was on the move.
My sister Martha asked me, "Now, Mary, what exactly was the purpose of that little scene you caused right there in the middle of dinner?" All I could say was, it was just something I could do. Maybe I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me back up. Meeting Jesus. I guess I just never thought he would be so personable. One who would come over to our home, have dinner with our family, laugh at our jokes, tell a few of his own. Sitting there with Jesus made everything else seem less important. So that night, we wanted to honor him for everything he'd done for us. And looking back now, realizing that the whole world was against him, there could have been so much more. I mean, we could have let him know that we were unified, that we were all for him, and that was a missed opportunity. Where was I? Oh yeah. So we had him over for dinner that night to honor him. Now, how exactly do you thank someone for bringing your brother back to life? Well, Martha, our sister, she was in the kitchen making this perfect meal for him. And then there was me. What could I do? So I decided to give up one of my most precious possessions. And precious things given to Jesus are never wasted. But I knew, as soon as I did it, it was obvious. Some people were not pleased with my choice. But it was not planned. It was spur of the moment. It leapt from my heart. I let down my hair in public, which is something you just don't do. And then I wiped his feet with it. And I poured this expensive perfumed oil on his feet to honor him. Oh, the beautiful scent. Oh, it filled the whole room. Now, if I would have stayed paralyzed in fear over what my sister thought, or the anger of the onlookers, or even what one of the disciples could say, I could have never worshiped him the way I did. Oh, that beautiful fragrance. It stayed for days and days. Somehow, sitting there at his feet, their opinions didn't matter much. Jesus was pleased with me, and he stood up in my defense. So why did I do it? I guess it was all I had. And just days after, Jesus would pour out everything he had for us, for me.
It was a crazy week.
Crazy week.
I honestly didn't even know if we were coming or going.
Well, I mean, I knew, but you didn't.
You knew nothing.
I knew something was going on. Something big.
Anyways, we were all with Jesus at the time, and the town was upside down. I mean, you got the feast going on, you got the Passover in full swing, and Lazarus raised from the dead. Everybody was talking about that.
Oh, and don't forget about all the miracles people were talking about.
Who's telling the story?
Who's
telling the story?
You were.
So you got all these miracles going on that people are talking about at the Passover, and and
don't forget about Jesus when he rode in on the colt, and people were like throwing down palm branches. That was amazing. Oh, sorry.
So anyways, you got all these people talking about all the different miracles. You got all these people actually believing in Jesus, that he's the king that we're all waiting for. I remember even hearing this one Pharisee say something about, they're out of control. Everybody's in a stampede over him.
Stampede? Who uses that word anymore?
I swear, I'm gonna get all Elijah up on you and come down on a firestorm.
I'd like to see you try. Not here, of course, like after we're done with this.
So anyways, there was this group of Greeks, basically a bunch of Gentiles that came to us.
Greeks? More like geeks, if you ask me.
Hey, I'm Greek. What are you saying?
Nothing. Please continue.
So I didn't even know what to tell them. So I went to Andrew. And
see? Don't be fooled. He needs me.
Yeah, you're right. I need you to throw under the bus. So we decided to go tell Jesus, and it was really weird. He wasn't even listening to what we were saying.
I know. Like you said, it was weird. Like, Jesus acted as if we were children interrupting an important conversation. Like, we were like deers caught in a headlamp. And then Jesus said something like, "Who's up? Who's up for the Son of God to be glory-filled?"
Who's up? He didn't say who's up.
You calling me a liar?
I'm not calling you a liar. Maybe deaf, not a liar. What he said was, time's up. He said, the time's come for the Son of Man to be glorified.
Well, that's what I intended. Anyways.
Jesus started talking to us about a grain of wheat and how it has to be buried in order for it to reproduce. We all knew that Jesus was talking in code again, but this time he was talking about himself, and he was talking about his death. It was weird. We got that, but we just didn't get the full picture.
I did. Sort of. Jesus said, and I know I have this right. Jesus said, anyone who holds on to life will lose it, but anyone who lets go will have eternal life.
Yeah, and do you remember that voice? That was God. I mean, some people thought it was thunder, other people thought it was just angels, but we all knew. Right after Jesus spoke, God said, I have glorified it, and I will glorify it again.
Yeah, and then he turned to us and said, that voice wasn't for me. It was to benefit you. Now listen up.
Yeah, I think the thing that stuck out the most to me was when Jesus said that if we wanted to serve him, we had to follow him. He said, pick up your cross and follow me.
That was it, huh? Kind of forgot about the whole pick up your cross and follow me part. He knew it was the end, though.
It wasn't the end. This was just the beginning for all of us.
What a week.
What a week.
After Jesus was crucified, it was all over. I mean, were we wrong about him? We had to have been, because he was dead. So we hid. We hid out of fear. And on Sunday morning, a small group of us women, we went down to prepare the body with spices and ointments. It was the least we could do. For 3 days, we hid out of fear. It was the longest 3 days of my life. Oh, but Sunday, Sunday. I mean, is there a word for terrified and excited? I don't even know. But we were both of those things. As we bolted from the tomb, my head was running faster than my feet, and I have never run that fast in my life. We had to tell everybody what happened. The disciples, they were not going to believe what we had to tell them. The massive sealed tombstones just moved. The Roman soldiers silenced, and blinding angels, and the grave clothes just unnecessary now and folded neatly in the tomb, as if they had some secret to tell. If a picture's worth 1,000 words, an empty grave, that's worth 1,000 promises. Because, well, I mean, do you see what this means? We had been waiting for the Messiah to come and restore Israel. And Jesus, he exceeded all of our expectations.
He was the Messiah that nobody could contain because we were hoping way too small. I mean, this means that God can restore whatever has been taken from us. Because he lives. I mean, he lives so that we can live too. I mean, our greatest roadblock has been removed. Because now, not even the certainty of death can stop us because we live in Jesus. I mean, he defeated the enemy, and now we have that promise. It's just those grave clothes left in that tomb, those secret keeping pieces of cloth. Well, the secret's out now. He's not dead. He's not missing. He hasn't been taken. He's alive. He left death and those grave clothes in the tomb when he walked right out. I mean, I don't have all the answers, but if there is a way to be had, it is in him. And if there's any hope in this world, it is in Jesus Christ. Because he's alive. Our Messiah, the Messiah, my Messiah, is alive. Jesus. He's alive. The secret's out now.
I was headed into the city to celebrate Passover, same as I did every year. But as I was heading in, he was being led out as sacrificial lamb. I didn't understand what that meant at the time. So, as I arrived in Jerusalem, it was like nothing I'd ever seen before. There was had to be 10 times as many people there than the last time I was there to celebrate Passover. It was incredible. But there was something odd. The whole city just seemed angry. I mean, there were mobs of angry people. And all of a sudden, a guard, a soldier, yanks me and I mean, rips me from the crowd and points down and says, "You need to carry that man's cross." And at first, I'm thinking, if this man's blood gets on me, I mean, I can't celebrate Passover. That's the whole reason I was there. It was hard to see the man through the blood. And then our eyes met. And at that moment, I knew that this man was not a liar. This man was not just some crazy person with grand ideas. This man was the Messiah. So I carried what I could. He carried most of it. And we began to walk. That's when I heard the insults. They were shouting at him and now at me. I felt the spit. I felt his blood. They'd taken a crown made of thorns and they put it on his head and they smashed it down. And there was blood running in his eyes. So we get to the hill and they lay him out and they place a spike in both of his hands and in his feet. And then they lifted him up. He had all his weight on one spike in his feet. I couldn't watch. I mean, he pushed up with all of his might to just gasp for air. I couldn't watch it. So I looked down and I noticed the blood on my hands. And I think this blood is supposed to make me unclean. But I realize that this is the blood that makes me clean. And then he died. That was the day that I helped Jesus carry my cross. He hung and he died on my cross.